This podcast contains explicit language, discussions of depression, derealization, self-harm, and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. This is episode 4 of a continuing series about a disastrous crime committed by a teenage boy in a California mall of 2004. If you are just joining us, please go back and listen to the first 3 episodes. We continue now with the first-hand account from Blair Van Auken, best friend of perpetrator Conrad Cliff, after 18 years of silence on the subject.
And we were running down this gray hallway with all these unmarked doors and this long green pipe running along the ceiling. Negative space. And we ran through it. And she was laughing. And she was holding my hand. And I just followed her. I followed her. And her laugh's echoing everywhere, and the hallway just seems to keep going and going. The end, I can't see the end of it. I can't even see a real turn. It just kind of keeps curving, and it seems to kind of curve infinitely. And there's all these gray doors, and I just assume it's service entrances to everywhere. I have no idea where she's taking me until she suddenly just slams left into one of the doors and pulls me through, and I get hit in the face with this wave of cold air. And I realize we're in the ice skating rink. Way in the back by the vending machines. Which, I thought was pretty sneaky. I thought that was pretty cool. I said to her, how are we going to get skates? And she told me not to worry about it. She dragged me past all these little kids on the benches drinking hot cocoa and some of that, chicken soup in a cup you can get out of the vending machine. Can you believe that? The vending machines at the ice skating rink used to sell chicken soup. Like, a cup would drop down, you put in some quarters, press the button, cup would drop down, and it would squirt chicken soup down from the same machine that gave you hot cocoa. I had it once. It was okay. She pulled me over to this locker, and they had this line of lockers with some of the older kids were banging out their skates and getting the ice off. And she pushed a few people aside, and she was kind of brash about it. That's what I was starting to notice about her, and I liked it. She goes under this one locker, and she pulled out 2 pairs of skates. One was glittery blue, and then there was a black pair, too, and she passed me those skates. And I asked her whose they were, and she just laughed. So we sat on the bench, we laced up the skates, and I said to her, oh, so you must skate a lot. You have a locker here at the rink. And she said, yeah, she did figure skating. So, and I was like, well, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to fall down a lot because I don't do this much. And I think she said, oh, you've been keeping up so far. Something really sassy like that. She was cool like that. I really should have realized then. I'm not charming enough to get all that attention. There had to be another reason. All the clues were there. But I was a little bit blind. She took my hand. She pulled me onto the ice.
So one of the things I noticed after playing Otranto was that it messed with my vision.
Again, Jane Forrester, our only purported player of the missing arcade game Otranto.
Not right away. I played it at the flea market a few times, of course, but the last time I remember sitting in my car in the flea market parking lot afterward, wondering if it was safe for me to drive home, because I was having these like flashing after images across my vision.
I'm down there in the dark, at the bottom of this ladder.
Officer Wes Barker, former mall security.
I look up and I see all the arcade guys and this orange light above me. It's so dark, but I can hear the kid who wrecked the machine, and he's shouting. He's shouting something about, "What did you do to my eyes? What did you do to my eyes?" And then I hear someone else shouting.
The pipe works, the negative space. Underneath the arcade in that network of wires and waterworks that fed the moat, the mall, and the crucible of creation. On that November day in 2004, there happened to be a construction crew repairing a leaky section of a drainage valve. It might have been extremely difficult for me to figure out who was working construction down there that day, were it not for one of the crewmen interacting directly with Conrad.
That was that's got to be the weirdest day of my life. I'm happy to say that I haven't had a weirder day.
This is Maurice Reed. Nowadays, he runs a sunflower farm near Sacramento, but in 2004, he worked in plumbing and construction.
Yeah, I got hired onto a crew. We were fixing the drainage pipes at the mall. And the mall, the Royal Galleria, right? It's not around anymore. Or I guess it's around, but it's not open. But it had this really, really elaborate waterworks. It had like a moat and a fountain, and all the pipes were housed in these weird little narrow rooms between the floors. Now, and like I've been in tight spaces a lot doing construction, but I remember it felt really weird down there. Like we had to get in through this really small access hatch that was hidden behind this planter box. And then we had to like hunch down between this hedge sculpture that was like of a unicorn or something. And then you had to crouch for a bit before you could stand all the way up again. And then we had to pull in all this shit behind us too, like all these extra pipe pieces we were going to use, our patch kits, our picks and shovels, a couple of buckets of cement, a diamond blade concrete cutter, and a jackhammer, because they said that we were going to have to break into a section of the wall to do the full repair. And I remember it was a battery-powered jackhammer too. That was important. Like it didn't need to get plugged in. Then I swear we walk like 10 minutes down this gray hallway following these pipes until we get to the problem. And we left the cement buckets behind to go back for. It's like it was forever down there, man. And so the problem was that the leak was in this old part of the pipe that was completely covered in cement. And now most of the pipe was exposed and easy to work with, but there was this old section that they had sort of built on top of, and there was this dark line in the concrete, and it was like really discolored with all this calcification. And I could already see like this is going to be like a really nightmare big job. And also there was already water damage that had made this big crack in the cement, and they wanted us to jackhammer that and then check for worse damage to other parts of the pipes and other parts of the structure and then replace all the cement. So yeah, it was going to be like a pretty big job. But I remember feeling like really weird down there. Like, I don't know, like we could hear like echoes. I like people's voices and footsteps, and I know we were underneath the main floor of the mall, but it really sounded so weird, like filtered kind of. I don't know. It was really dark down there, you know. And we hadn't brought enough lights, and we thought that there would be more lights, but there was just this faint kind of gray glow, and you couldn't really even tell where it was coming from. And then when you looked all the way down the corridor, you couldn't see any light at all. Like it was pitch black. There were just these pipes running along the ceiling, like straight into the darkness. Oh yeah, shit. I forgot to mention there was one of the assistant mall managers down there with us. He was kind of showing us where to go, but he was a weird guy. He was really tall. So he was ducking like the entire time we were down there. But yeah, he didn't say much. He just pointed. And then after we got set up, he just left. But he went out the other way, like straight into the dark part of the hallway. So, so we get started, and we mark out where we thought the leak was prepped to cut with like a really big rectangle. And now the assistant manager guy had told my foreman Eddie on the phone that there were barely any outlets down there, and that was true. And so instead of running some insanely long extension cord down there with like a power relay off of the junction box and everything, we just got everything battery powered. So like the cement cutter and the jackhammer, like everything. But the one thing we didn't manage to do was to run a water line through to the cement cutter, which you usually want to keep it from getting smoky. But, since it was a leak fix, a lot of the times we don't have to run water just because there's so much water coming out of the pipe, and that usually lubricates itself. And that helps keep the smoke low. But that was definitely a miscalculation. So we had masks and goggles on, but when Eddie started cutting, like the whole corridor smoked up so bad, and we couldn't see anything, so we had to stop and wait for it to settle a little bit, and then keep going, and then stop, and it was just kind of like that for a bit. And when it was smoky, that's when the kids snuck up on us.
I'm Celia Maddox for KGEI Redwood Shores. This is a story of madness. This is MallWalk. Episode 4. The Trap Door.
So me and some of the arcade guys were staring down this hole in the floor, this trap door in the floor that had been under the Otranto cabinet.
Again, Dimitri Severne, a pinball enthusiast who witnessed the beginning of Conrad's psychotic break at the Palace Arcade.
And the Otranto cabinet is just shambles on the ground. And we had just watched the security guard climb down the ladder. And then we're all just left there staring down into this blackness, and we all stood there for a weirdly long time. I guess we were all wondering why there was this trap door and why it had been hidden and where it went. And we were staring into the darkness, waiting for something new to come into view. Then I started to remember and started thinking about the way some of those old games work, where you get stuck on a boss fight or a dungeon puzzle, and you just kept dying over and over again, and it just becomes this obsessive pattern. And when you close your eyes, you see the pattern. They call it the Tetris effect. Suddenly, the game is all you can see. It takes over your hard drive. It can change the pattern of your thoughts, or at least the images you see when you close your eyes, or in the dark.
So one of the things I noticed after playing Otranto was that it messed with my vision.
So I guess I was wondering if that was what happened to the kid, but he hadn't even been playing the game that long, just like an hour or two. Usually you get that real rewiring after image Tetris effect when you play the game for hours and hours, or even days and days. So If he got it that fast, then it had to have triggered something that had already been going on with him, you know. We figured that out. And we kept staring down into the dark through the trapdoor.
So I kept following the sound. I heard him shouting, but now he wasn't shouting words. He was just sort of wailing, and I could hear like power tools. And then I started coughing. It was getting all smoky all of a sudden, and so I quickly, dug my face into my shirt collar, and the smoke, it smelled like plaster dust. It was really awful. And I pulled out my flashlight to see, and it was the eeriest thing. I turned it on. Just, you couldn't see anything. All you could see was brown and gray from the smoke and dust. It was like nothing. It was like being nowhere. Except for you could hear the kid. And he was shouting something. Something about... Oh, what was it? Isabella, like over and over again.
Isabella. And we're using the cement saw, so the jackhammer was on the ground, and the kid snuck up and grabbed it, and then he starts saying something about the sword of the giant or something. Like, so then we all notice him, and Eddie turns off the saw, but then we have to wait a second for the smoke to clear. And when it finally does, we see that it's this tall, kind of muscular kid in a skeleton hoodie, and he's holding the jackhammer out like towards us. And then he turned it on, and he seemed to be like threatening us with it. Like, I thought he was going to attack us or something, but then he turns it back off, and he started saying, like, he was saying something about, like, why are you trying to save his life? Like, I don't know if it's alive or if it's some sort of, like, if it's some sort of endless loop, I think is what he was saying, or if any of us are alive, or just like, he was super hard to follow. Like, I grew up in the city, so I'm used to hearing crazy people say crazy shit all the time, and that's all that it sounded like, honestly. But we all backed away, because even if we could tackle him and get the jackhammer away, like, it just didn't seem like it was worth the risk. He lifted this jackhammer up, and he touched it to one of the pipes. And I remember Eddie was just saying, no, 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 no. And I remember exactly what the kid said next, because, like, it sounded like a quote from, like, a movie or a song or something like that, but, like, I couldn't place it. He said it like a question. He said, a major artery in the corridor of dreams? Like dreams? Like a question. And then he turned on the jackhammer. So we ditched the equipment, and we ran back towards the hatch as fast as we could, but we must have gotten lost, because all we hit was just a gray wall, like, with no exit. And then I remember the water started rising up around our ankles, and we heard, like, the echo of the jackhammer going again, like, way, way, way down the hall, and just more water. And I remember we all just split in different directions, and I was just running. It was just pitch dark. I had no idea where I was going. I was just looking for light, or for a hole, or just somewhere to escape to. But no matter where I went, I kept feeling the water come up against my feet and my ankles and my knees, and I just kept thinking, I'm gonna die down here.
So I was on the ice next to her, very unsteady, for sure. And, she was just swimming across, looking real, she knew what she was doing. And I was holding her hand, and I was doing the little fishes for dear life to stay up. The little fishes where you swoop your feet? That's all I remembered from ice skating as a younger kid, do the little fishes. So I was swooping my feet in like a little fish formation in big swoops so I could move, and she was going a little slower than me. A little slower for me. But at one point, I let go of her hand, and she just raced ahead. And she twirled around and skated backwards, staring at me. It was pretty cool. It was very attractive. She was showing off. The hardest part for me wasn't even staying upright. It was avoiding hitting all the other people going around the circle. And in the middle of the ice skating rink were the real pros who were doing twirls and jumps. And I said to her, why don't you go into the middle and show off? And she just laughed. I remember looking up at the big vaulted ceiling. I thought it would help me balance. I couldn't tell where the music was coming from in that ice skating rink. It sounded like it was coming from way up high. And it was mixing in with all the voices going around. And just then she swooped back in and grabbed my hand. And it was the big adventure feeling, tingling in my spine, the back of my neck. But everything was also getting big around me, almost like Kmart. And I felt bad that I'd left Conrad back in the arcade, and I felt bad that I was feeling bad. Because I was ice skating with a pretty girl, and earlier in the day I told myself that if I ended up here doing what I was doing now, that it would be like the end of a quest. The end of my story. Which was stupid, because I should have known that I didn't want anyone or anything, really. What I wanted was to want. And when she looked at me with her big eyes and she took my hand and she pulled me along the ice, it didn't feel real. It wasn't real. That's the great thing about being unhappy. When things go wrong, when joy proves to be an illusion, you feel vindicated. It was nice, ice skating, obviously, even if I couldn't let myself enjoy it. We skated a bit longer, and then we went back over by the vending machine near the door we'd come in through. I had enough money left to get us both hot chocolates, and we sat on the bench and drank them, and she did most of the talking. We took our skates off. I couldn't stop thinking about Conrad. Even though I told myself he'd want me to be focusing on her if I could. And even if I couldn't get to the moment, even if I was thinking about him back there, or what I was going to do with her next, I knew I had to keep giving myself a chance to be there with her. And really be there. I couldn't always just be moving through the mall. From escalator to escalator, up and down, over and over. I mean, what's the fucking point? I had to be in the mall. I had to be part of the mall. It was the place to be. And with her, maybe that would be possible. In a new way. We walked out of the ice rink through the front entrance this time. We crossed the western hallway. And we went into the aquarium.
The mall's aquarium was renowned throughout the Bay Area, not only for its collection of fish, but also for the way it intersected with the medieval moat which ran down the western hallway, directly connecting the aquarium to the crucible of creation.
We walked around a bit, eventually ended up in the back where they have this dark room full of bioluminescent jellyfish. Usually that room's full of people and kids, but I don't think there was anyone but us in there. Or if there was, it was too dark to see them. Anyway, we felt alone. And she leaned in. And we started kissing. And then we heard people start screaming. And then we felt our feet get wet.
When I tried to reach for the kid, he had the jackhammer on the pipe, and he was digging at it, and it cracked. And this wave of water just carried me down. And I saw him shooting down the hallway after me, and he was wrapped around the jackhammer. He was coming toward me like a missile. And then I hit. This back wall knocked the wind out of me. I saw him coming. I thought he was going to crash into me with the jackhammer, and you know, that would be it. But at the last second, he sloughed off to one side into the blackness, and I swear I could see him going up. It was strange. But that's when I realized he was getting sucked up into one of the shooters that fed the fountain. It's like a giant pump. And I knew he was going to drown. But he didn't, because somehow, some way, that battery-powered jackhammer was still working, even submerged, which surprised me. But he turned it back on while he was under, I guess, because I heard another crack. And then I saw light above me, and for a second I saw the gray sky of the dome from the central plaza. And then water rushed in, rushed down, and I was all the way under. And I fell into this current, and I was holding my breath. It threw me all around. At one point I ran into someone else's body, and they were thrashing. I don't know if it was him, the kid, Conrad, or it was someone else. But a second later, we were wrenched apart, and I went tumbling off into the water. I said my prayers, and I held my breath. And I landed on this piece of metal. I opened my eyes. I was on the edge of this big pool of black water. I pulled myself up, grabbed the lip of an air vent, ripped the grate off, and crawled inside.
And then suddenly we saw something at the bottom of the ladder through the trapdoor. There was this guy looking up at us, and he looked scared.
I saw a light above me, and these faces are looking down. And so I start shouting, I go, help, 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 and I reach up.
And he was reaching up at us.
And then suddenly I just felt this swell just soak me, just cover.
And I was leaning forward to grab his hand when he just shot up at us and grabbed the carpet of the arcade and hoisted himself out of the trapdoor. And then water just started gushing out all around him. Everyone screamed. All the machines crackled and went off one by one, and we started running out. But someone else was shouting to go the other way. And that's when we saw the wall of water come in our way from the fountain.
The mechanical specifics of the flood are hard to piece together. Witness accounts create further confusion. Descriptions repeatedly stress the sudden force and overwhelming power of the flood. Officer Barker's description of the labyrinthine network in the piping, the way Conrad was sucked upward. Dimitri's description of the wall of water rushing toward the megaplex lobby. Yet, the aquarium and the bowling alley were at a slight downhill, the last areas to flood.
We knew something was wrong because everyone was making noise, and there were noises echoing down the hall from outside, and we couldn't see the water, we could just feel it over our feet. And this time, I was the one who took her hand and dragged her along and pulled her out of the jellyfish room, and we were in the brighter area of the sea otter exhibit. And that's when we really saw that the place was flooded. It was confusing because there's this big wall of glass with all this water behind it. Now there's also water in front of it too. Everyone's splashing through it. Parents picking their kids up. Kids are crying. People are shouting. Consuelo looked at me. There was this real fear in her eyes for the first time. She'd seemed so confident up until then. She'd led me so far through it all. She'd represented all the feelings I could never reach. Somehow, through the shouting, one voice pierced through towards us, and that voice was shouting, "Consuela!" And at first I was worried it was those kids again in the bowling jackets, from the food court. Or that old man. But it wasn't any of them. It was this really tall kid in a hoodie, and he was pointing at both of us. And then he was splashing through the water toward us. And I could tell he was angry, and he was looking right at me. And that's when I started to piece it all together. Yeah, of course she had a boyfriend. And of course he was there at the mall. She had counted on him being there. That's what I was all about. That was the point of me. And it was a version of what Conrad would have called the worst kind of happiness. It's when you realize you had a reason to be sad the whole time, when you thought you should have been happy. The happy thing was fake. Like all this day, the movie, kissing, the ice skating. And suddenly I realized why she had another pair of skates in her locker. Duh, the black pair that I'd been wearing. And I realized why she'd taken me out there on the ice, to be seen by everyone, probably people she knew. But instead of seeing me there, he saw me now. In the flood. In the dark. In the aquarium. And she shouted, "Stop, stop!" And he swung on me, but he slipped in the water, and his fist just caught my shoulder. And she was saying, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean for this to happen. But I couldn't tell if she was talking to him or me. It didn't matter. I let go of her hand. I walked away while he was slipping, trying to stand. She was shouting. He was shouting. I splashed back through the jellyfish room. I was going past the crowd running the opposite direction. I walked upstream the crowd, to the far back, to the big display, the one the aquarium was known for. This big coral reef with these big rocks. Knobby purple corals and eels and stingrays and schools of fish and 2 hammerhead sharks swimming in circles. And I stood there. I felt the water rise above my socks, coming up to my shins now. And I heard people screaming, and I got low. And I knelt in the water. And I was wet now. And everyone else in the room left in a flurry until it was just me and the rising water and the hammerhead sharks doing circles behind the glass. They looked down. They were swimming in place, pressing against the glass, agitated. They knew something was happening. And then I heard this creaking, and I looked up, and there was this metal hatch in the ceiling that swung open. It felt like something out of King Arthur, the Lady of the Lake, hurling Excalibur, because this big metal weapon dropped down, landed, splashed. Stuck up right in the floor, gleaming. It was a jackhammer. It missed me by a few feet. And down after it came Conrad. He crouched and rolled as he landed. He rolled into the water and he stood back up. He was soaked all the way through. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked around, he looked at me, gave me this smile of recognition. Like I was the first thing he saw in that room. And the hammerhead sharks swam up to the glass behind him. And it's like they were looking down at us, watching him, wondering, just like I was. And I said, Conrad. And he walked over and touched my face, and he held my shoulders. And he looked into my eyes and he said, "It's all a dream." No, it isn't. No, it isn't a dream. It's real. I'm down here in the water, I'm wet, and you're there, and all of it. And he said, "It's all a dream. Aren't you fucking tired? Aren't you fucking tired?" And he was screaming now. And he leaned on me. He was panting. He was sagging against me. With one hand, he gestured at the jackhammer. He looked back at the two hammerhead sharks pressed against the glass, and he said, "There they are." He said, "The dream eaters. Help me. Set them free. Help me. I can't lift it again. I can't." He kept pointing and gesturing it. I got the idea he wanted me to use the jackhammer to lift it up, use it to break the glass. I understood that. It's weird that I understood that, because that's not something that should be easily understood. It's not easily understood. We still don't understand it. That's why we're talking about it. Nothing from that day is easy to understand. But I understood. And I said, no. I said, stop. Stop this. Somehow, I understood more than that. I understood that all this water around us was him. It was us. I touched his face. I felt it all falling apart. And I refused it. Do you understand? I had a chance to join him in that feeling. I have an idea of what it would have felt like to become a maker of the flood with him, to enjoy the feeling of the total destruction. I'm supposed to be on here apologizing, right? But I could have joined him. That feeling was a feeling we usually talked about turning inward together. Yeah, we talk about it, about ending it together. And he usually got a little closer than I would. The marks on his arm were proof of that. And we'd sit in the dark together and light candles and read poetry together and try to turn that total destruction feeling into the pleasures of melancholy. He broke away from me. He stood up. He looked at me. He spit in my face. And he walked backwards. He was making ripples in the water as he walked. And the hammerheads looked down through the glass. They were looking down on him. Sorry. He lifted the jackhammer somehow. And he said, "I hope you never get better. I hope you're always looking backwards. I hope your sadness feels like quicksand. And I hope you never learn a thing from it. I was about to shout his name again. And then he said, and I hope you can't find a word for how you feel. And I hope you never have anything worth saying left to say. And then he raised the jackhammer up with both hands. And he screamed. I could tell he was in pain. And he turned and faced the audience. The hammerheads. He placed the tip of the spear to the glass.
MallWalk is a production of KGEI Redwood Shores. In this episode, you've heard the voices of Blair Van Auken, Dimitri Saverne, Jackie Forrester, and Officer Wes Barker. Music for this episode was by Trevor Brandt, Cat System Corp., Power PCME, Harry Gibbons, and 9 Inch Nails. I'm Celia Maddox. For episodes, show notes, and a complete track listing, visit our website, mallwalkpodcast.com. Continue the mall walk with us as the pace quickens. Meet us in the chaos of the floodwaters for episode 5, The Hammerhead.